Yeah, no, it's a problem. I'm a nerd. So ask me about something I know about, and I will rant about it. It's a problem.
Perfect. Oh god, this
Whoa,
is
it's
so
so
scary. I know. Okay. Alright, hold on. Alright. Hi, my name is Erin, and I use she, her pronouns, and I'm currently interning with the Office of Equity and Diversity here at Eastern. Today I'm joined with...
Elena Zachary. I use any pronouns right now. I just kind of exist everywhere.
Perfect. Today we're going to be having a conversation about pronouns and other related topics. But before we get started, do you want to talk a little bit about the Pride Center here at Eastern? Maybe just give our listeners a brief overview of what goes on there and how you're involved?
Sure. So, the Pride Center is a place for people, honestly anybody, with, any sexuality or gender to hang out. It's a safe space, and you can just be who you are in there. They've got a lot of resources, especially for people transitioning. They've got like resources for packing, for trans tape binders. They've got stuff for like menstruation. They've got an open closet. They just have a lot of resources, and they're free, and it's awesome. They also have library like shelves that are like full of books, and it's awesome.
Perfect. So people can go there and learn more after this if they want to. All right. So for you, when did you first think about pronouns?
Well, I mean, like for most like of my life, I knew like yes, pronouns are, how you refer to people, but like in terms of like how people identified themselves as, I feel like it started like somewhere around like 7th or 8th grade.
All right. And in your own words, why are pronouns so important? Not only to you, but just to everyone.
Well, it's a great way to be like, yes, like I am this kind of human. Like it's a great way to like explain the kind of like vibe you are, like you use she her pronouns, and that's like, okay, yes, you're feminine, and somebody who uses he him pronouns, they're more likely to be, masculine. It's a great way to like figure out, okay, so this person, I can expect this kind of vibe from them. And it helps when you're like talking about somebody to somebody else, being like, oh yeah, no, he's a great guy, and it's just a thing that's like really important in this society, where it's just like it's an identifying factor.
Yeah, so you think it plays obviously a big role in affirming someone's identity, especially their gender identity. So do you mind sharing maybe a little bit about your story and how, like, what pronouns mean to you and your gender identity?
Yeah, sure. So basically it started like around 8th grade, where I was really starting to question everything about myself, and I started to realize like late 8th grade, early freshman year, that I didn't really feel feminine at all. I was extremely masculine in that time. I wanted to use like strictly he him pronouns, and like it was just a whole thing, and I was like, wow, I'm not normal. you know and like it was really interesting because I didn't really understand it at the time. Yeah. And then at one point my brother was taking me to Six Flags, and I had really short hair at the time. I was mostly wearing my brother's hand-me-down shirts, and there was this one person doing like the security checking and stuff, and he was talking to my brother, and he was like, oh yeah, is this your brother right there, to me, like about me. And I was like, I love that. And that was when I realized, like, hey, I don't really like being referred to as a female. And then, like, over time, it just became a thing where sometimes I'm not female, so then hearing people refer to me as she, her kind of makes me uncomfortable, And then, there are some times where if somebody uses he, him, it also makes me uncomfortable. So it was just this whole process of like trial and error. I'm complicated because I'm gender fluid, so it's never really consistent. Mm-hmm. One day one pronoun works for me, another day another one does not, So it's definitely still a process of like identifying exactly when I'm feeling what.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a journey, that's for sure.
Yeah, and we know like for a lot of people it is, and obviously some people are still, maybe sometimes they'll go by she, her, maybe a year later they'll realize that doesn't make me feel comfortable anymore, so it's always okay to, change, be fluid with it. Yeah. And so you said when you were at Six Flags, when that guy referred to you as your brother's brother, that made you feel really comfortable, really good. So kind of on the other hand, for you, like, how does it make you feel when someone uses the wrong pronouns? Like in the case where like they're maybe not even on purpose, but just like kind of just assuming what your pronouns are. Like, how does that make you feel to be misgendered in that way?
Well, actually, no, I do have a perfect example of this because I am friends with a lot of people, a wide range of human beings. So not everybody asks, not everybody, like, reads my pins. I have a plethora. Yeah. And so I typically am referred to with she, her pronouns. And usually it's okay, I'm like, yeah, whatever, they don't really ask. I don't really care that much. But, if I'm interacting with them for like a week straight and it's nothing but she, her, she, her, she, her, it kind of weighs down on me a little bit. And then I'm like, man, I need some affirmation. So then I'll like message one of my friend groups and I'll be like, hey, I need some gender affirmation. Yeah. And they're like, all right, bro. And I'm like, okay, thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah, like it's great.
So how do you kind of handle those situations? Like, how would you maybe tell someone like, hey, I actually use these pronouns?
Sometimes I'll like divert the topic a little bit. I'm like, you could say I'm good at transitioning. But basically, like I'll slowly like change topic over to like gender and how people identify, or I'll be like, oh yeah, by the way, what are your pronouns? Because I'm like, oh yeah, I've been talking to you for like a week and I don't know your pronouns. What are your pronouns? And then they'll ask me, and then because of the way that normal conversations go, they're like, oh, I use these pronouns, how about you? And so then I'm like, oh yeah, no, I use any because I'm complicated like that. And sometimes they'll ask me more questions, sometimes they won't, Yeah. And it works.
Yeah, so kind of just addressing the situation. Yeah. I feel like that's a really nice way to kind of, without feeling the uncomfortableness of being like, oh, you're misgendering me, because...
Yeah.
So how do you think that, like, schools, workplaces, communities in general can kind of be more inclusive for just using pronouns and making people kind of aware that pronouns aren't something that should be assumed?
Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. I heard of this one thing, I think, that some school somewhere did. My memory on the specifics is very vague, but basically it was like a school-wide survey that went out being like, hey, what's the name that appears on like the papers and the assignments and everything, and then what is your preferred name and what are your preferred pronouns, So I heard of that and I was like, oh shoot, that's really cool. And then, all of the teachers would be able to see it and be like, okay, so I've got this person, their name may say this in the roster, but they go by this, so I will refer to them as this,
Yeah, and then it's coming straight from the student's mouth. Like, I like that idea a lot. Do you have any, or can you think of any off the top of your head, any common misconceptions about pronouns that you think like need to be addressed and talked about just in general?
Well, I know that some people like think pronouns and they immediately think LGBT community. And they're like, well, I'm not trans or anything like that. So then they're like, well, then that means that it must not apply to me.
Yeah.
And pronouns are just how people refer to other people without using their name.
Exactly.
So that's definitely a very big misconception that I know. It's just people aren't fully aware of what pronouns are or the fact that it's just, a thing.
Yeah, and on that topic, like, what do you think we could do, maybe here at Eastern, maybe just in general, to kind of bring more awareness to what pronouns are, why they're important, why we need to use them and respect them?
Um, I'm not entirely sure. I know that for training for job that I'm currently working, we had this one training where we ended up having Pride Center people come over and they ended up talking about their resources, who they are, what they do, and everything like that. And I don't remember if they did that at orientation. They might have. I don't remember. My memory is very blurry from that time. But I mean, if they're already doing, keep it up. If they're not doing
Yeah.
it, then they should totally do it. So
Yeah. And why do you think some people are so hesitant to the idea? Like, obviously, a lot of like the older generation. Why do you think they're so hesitant to, have people identify their pronouns and have people be able to use whatever pronouns they feel comfortable with? Do you think it's just like a lack of education, just like an age gap thing?
so I actually know a little bit. It's a little bit of a generational thing. My mom and stepdad, they're from the same generation. And, I had some of my friends come over for a Halloween party. And, like, my stepdad sees one of my friends and, like, pulls me further into the kitchen and is like, what, who is person, and then is like, okay, what's this person's pronouns? And so, I explained it to them, and I like fully explained it to my stepdad and my mom, and I was like, you could also just ask them if you don't remember. And my mom was like, oh no, you never ask people their pronouns. So it's very much a generational thing where like we ask people their pronouns because for us, if you don't know something, ask. But for like Gen X, you don't ask just because it's rude almost to them.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wonder why that is. Why you would feel rude almost,
Yeah.
asking, trying to make someone else more comfortable.
Yeah. And like I also know that, people get defensive really easily. That's
Yeah.
just a very normal human thing to do. Like I get defensive too. It's a problem, but for other stuff.
Yeah.
But like, if somebody is like accidentally misgender someone and they're like, "Oh, actually I'm a this," then, sometimes they're like, "Oh, you're saying that I'm wrong? Is there something wrong about,
Yeah.
using these pronouns?" Like, and then they just get defensive about it, and it's even worse if they had a conversation that was unpleasant
Yeah.
around it. Like then they're just more likely to become that much more aggressive.
Yeah, and I think people kind of need to, I don't know, stop thinking of it as like some big controversial topic and realize it's the same as saying they went to the store, I went to the store, she went to the store, he went to the store. It's just a matter of making the person you're talking with more comfortable and,
Yeah.
again, affirming their gender identity and what they feel comfortable with. So I'm going to move the conversation a little bit away from just pronouns and just go into some related topics, kind of just about LGBT issues and Pride Center and stuff like that. So in every community, bias and stereotypes exist, just like we were talking about with pronouns. This is kind of just like a funny question to break it up.
Go for
What's
it.
the craziest or most ridiculous stereotype you've heard surrounding like the LGBT community, pronouns, anything like that?
That somehow using the right pronouns is grooming children. I don't I don't know where that
He'll-
I don't know where that came from. I don't know how it happened. I'm kind of curious about the history just from morbid curiosity, but I got to say that was like the wildest take I've
Yeah.
ever heard.
You
Where it's
can-
like like if you teach somebody, like, oh yeah, that's a dog, and then somebody's like, oh yeah, no, she's so cute, and then somebody's like, actually the dog's a boy, you're like, oh shoot, he's so cute. Like,
Yeah.
but for a human, if you do that where you're like, actually person is a he, then you're like, oh no, that's grooming, and I'm like, I don't I don't know, it's weird.
Yeah, and I think that could stem from kind of maybe people being scared of fluidity, like people being like, oh, you think like you were born a male, but you think you might want to use she, her pronouns, like that's it. Now you're she, her forever. But people don't really get like, oh, well, I could feel like maybe I'm identifying as a woman today, but next week I might not, and that's okay. And there's no rules to it.
Yeah.
Just like there's no rules to sexuality. And I feel like people maybe in more recent years have kind of come around to that idea of like a fluid sexuality, but I think we're still trying to get there with like fluid gender identity and stuff like that.